In the quiet town of Willow Creek, Ohio, where maple trees lined the streets and the air carried the faint scent of wood smoke in autumn, the Thompson family's two-story brick home stood as a beacon of warmth. The house, with its white shutters and neatly trimmed lawn, glowed softly under the moonlight on a chilly October night. Inside, the world was still, save for the gentle hum of the basement heater and the occasional creak of the old hardwood floors. It was just past 2 a.m., and the Thompsons, Emily, Jack, their 9-month-old daughter Lily, and their golden Labrador retriever Cooper were fast asleep, unaware of the danger creeping through their home. Emily Thompson, 32, lay, curled beneath a quilt in the master bedroom, her auburn hair fanned across the pillow. Her husband, Jack, 34, slept beside her, his steady breathing a quiet rhythm in the dark. Down the hall, in a nursery painted with pastel clouds, Lily slept in her crib, her tiny chest rising and falling under a soft cotton blanket. Cooper, the family's loyal companion for 5 years, sprawled across a woven rug at the foot of the dew crib, his golden fur catching the faint glow of a nightlight. His ears twitched occasionally, attuned to the subtle sounds of the night, a breeze rustling the maples outside, the distant bark of a neighbor's dog. Cooper had been with the Thompsons, long before Lily's arrival, a gentle giant with amber eyes that seemed to see more than most. When Lily was born, he'd taken to her immediately, lying patiently beside her playmat as she gurgled and reached for his fur. Emily often called him Lily's second guardian, always nearby, always watchful. Jack, who had grown up with dogs, marveled at Cooper's patience, the way he'd let Lily tug at his ears without a flinch. Tonight, like every night, Cooper had settled near the crib after Emily tucked Lily in, humming a lullaby as she arranged the baby's blanket. Jack had made his usual rounds, checking the windows and locking the front door, his engineer's mind ticking through a mental checklist. The porch light cast a warm glow over the front yard before he flicked it off, plunging the house into darkness. The evening had been unremarkable, a snapshot of their quiet life in Willow Creek. Emily, a part-time graphic designer, had spent the day working on a logo for a local bakery while keeping an eye on Lily. Jack, a mechanical engineer at a manufacturing plant, had come home with stories of a new project, his hands gesturing animatedly over dinner. They'd eaten spaghetti, laughed as Lily smeared sauce on her cheeks, and watched Cooper wait patiently for any crumbs that might fall. After dinner, they'd settled into the living room, the fireplace casting a cozy glow as they read a bedtime story to Lily. By 10 p.m., the house was quiet, the family tucked into their beds, the world outside whispering with the wind. But sometime in the early hours, that peace shattered. Cooper stirred from his spot by the crib, his head lifting as his nose twitched. A faint, acrid scent drifted through the air, chemical, unnatural, almost imperceptible to human senses. It wasn't smoke, but something subtler, more insidious, seeping up from the basement where the gas-powered heater hummed. Cooper's ears perked, his body tensing as he rose to his feet. His amber eyes scanned the darkened nursery, searching for the source of the disturbance. The baby monitor on the nightstand crackled softly, picking up the faint shuffle of his paws against the rug, but Emily and Jack slept on, oblivious. The Labrador paced the nursery, his nails clicking softly against the hardwood beyond the rug. His usual calm was gone, replaced by a restless energy that made his fur bristle. He circled Lily's crib, sniffing the air, his breath puffing in short, anxious bursts. The scent was stronger now, drifting through the floorboards from the basement. A small leak in the gas line, invisible and odorless to humans, had begun to fill the house with carbon monoxide, a silent killer that could steal breath and life without warning. Cooper, with his keen nose and sharper instincts, sensed it. Something was wrong. He let out a low whine, a sound laced with urgency, his tail tucked close to his body. He pawed at the baby gate at the nursery door, his movements deliberate but controlled. The gate rattled, holding firm, but Cooper's whine grew louder, more insistent, as he nudged it with his nose. In the master bedroom, Emily stirred, her eyes fluttering open at the faint sound filtering through the baby monitor. She lay still, her mind foggy with sleep, trying to place the noise. "Jack," she whispered, nudging her husband's shoulder. "Do you hear that?" Jack mumbled, something incoherent pulling the quilt tighter. "It's just Cooper," he said, his voice thick with sleep. "Probably chasing a dream." But Cooper's whines sharpened, cutting through the haze of sleep. Emily sat up, her heart quickening as she glanced at the baby monitor. The grainy screen showed the nursery, and there was Cooper, pacing in front of the crib, his head low, his body tense. "Jack, something's wrong," she said, her voice sharper now. "He's in Lily's room." Jack groaned, rubbing his eyes as he swung, his legs over the side of the bed. "He's fine, Em. He's just restless." But Emily was already up, pulling on her robe as she headed for the door. Jack followed, his bare feet padding against the cold hardwood floor. The hallway was dark, lit only by the faint glow of the nightlight spilling from Lily's room. As they approached, the nursery door creaked open just enough for them to see inside. What they saw stopped them cold. Cooper was at the crib, his teeth gently gripping the edge of Lily's blanket. The baby, still swaddled, was being slowly pulled toward the edge of the mattress, her tiny body sliding across the sheet. Cooper's movements were careful, deliberate, his eyes fixed on the task. Emily's breath caught in her throat. "Cooper, no!" she cried, rushing forward. Jack was right behind her, his heart pounding as he shouted, "Stop it, boy!" But Cooper didn't stop. He tugged the blanket free. Lily bundled inside and began dragging it across the floor toward the open door. His eyes flicked toward Emily, and Jack, wild with determination, but he didn't release the blanket. Emily's hands trembled as she reached for Lily, her mind racing with fear and confusion. "What is he doing?" she gasped, her voice breaking. Jack grabbed her arm, pulling her back as Cooper maneuvered Lily into the hallway. The Labrador's movements were steady, purposeful, as if he knew exactly what he was doing. He let out a sharp bark, a sound that echoed through the quiet house, urging them to follow. Emily's heart hammered as she stumbled after him, Jack at her side, their bare feet slapping against the floor. They followed Cooper through the hallway, past the living room with its overstuffed couch and scattered toys, toward the front door. The Labrador paused only once, glancing back to ensure they were behind him. His ears were pinned back, his body trembling with urgency. Jack's mind raced, trying to make sense of the scene. Cooper had never acted like this, never disobeyed a command, never touched Lily without permission. "Cooper, drop it!" Jack shouted again, but the dog ignored him, nudging the front door with his nose as if trying to open it, and then Jack smelled it, a faint chemical odor, like the sharp tang of gasoline but subtler, more insidious. His pulse quickened as he turned toward the basement door, just off the living room. The smell was stronger there, drifting up through the floorboards. "Emily," he said, his voice tight with panic. "It's gas." Her eyes widened, her hand flying to her mouth as the realization hit. Cooper hadn't been acting out of aggression or confusion. He'd sensed something they couldn't, a danger that was creeping through their home. Emily rushed to the front door, fumbling with the lock as Jack scooped Lily from the blanket in Cooper's jaws. The baby stirred, her face scrunching in confusion as she let out a soft whimper. Cooper bounded outside as soon as the door opened, his golden fur catching the moonlight as he stood on the front lawn, barking sharply to urge them out. Emily and Jack stumbled into the cold night air, the grass damp beneath their feet. Jack clutched Lily to his chest, her warmth a stark contrast to the chill that enveloped them. Emily wrapped her arms around them both, her breath coming in short, panicked gasps, Cooper stood in the center of the lawn, his chest heaving, his eyes locked on the house. His bark softened into a low, anxious whine, but he didn't move, his body taut with alertness. Jack turned to look at the house, his heart sinking as he saw a faint haze near the basement window. Not smoke, but something just as dangerous. The gas leak, silent and invisible, had been growing, and Cooper had known before any alarm could sound. "Jack," Emily whispered, her voice trembling as she clutched Lily tighter. He knew. "He got her out?" Jack nodded, his throat tight with emotion as he looked at Cooper. The Labrador's ears flicked forward, his gaze never leaving the house. "You saved her, boy," Jack murmured, his voice breaking. In the distance, a neighbor's porch light flicked on, then another. Faces appeared at windows, drawn by Cooper's barks, and the sight of the Thompsons standing on their lawn in their pajamas, a baby in their arms. Mrs. Callahan, their neighbor across the street, hurried out in her robe, her phone already in hand. "What's going on?" she called, her voice sharp with concern. Jack shook his head, still clutching Lily. "Gas leak," he said, his voice hoarse. "Cooper got us out." Mrs. Callahan's eyes widened as she dialed 911, her voice steady as she relayed the situation to the dispatcher. Within minutes, the wail of sirens pierced the night, growing louder as a fire truck and a utility van from the gas company pulled into the street. Firefighters spilled out, their boots heavy on the pavement as they approached the house. A technician, a wiry man named Tom with a clipboard, followed, his face grim as he carried a detector. Emily and Jack stood on the lawn, shivering in the cold as Lily began to fuss, her tiny hands grasping at Jack's collar. Cooper sat beside them, his body pressed against Emily's leg, his eyes still fixed on the house. The technician entered the house with the firefighters, their flashlights cutting through the darkness. After what felt like an eternity, Tom emerged, his expression serious but relieved. "You're lucky," he said, wiping his brow. "There's a leak in the gas line to the heater. Small, but it was building up. Could have been bad. Carbon monoxide, maybe worse." He glanced at Cooper, who was sitting vigilantly by Emily's side. "Your dog must have smelled it. Animals can sense that kind of thing before we do." Emily's eyes filled with tears as she knelt beside Cooper, her hands burying themselves in his golden fur. "You're our hero," she whispered, her voice thick with gratitude. Cooper leaned into her, his tail giving a slow, tired wag. Jack set Lily down on the grass, still wrapped in her blanket, and crouched beside them. "Good boy," he said, his hand resting on Cooper's head. The Labrador's amber eyes met his, calm but exhausted, as if he understood the weight of what he'd done. The firefighters worked quickly, shutting off the gas line and ventilating the house. Neighbors gathered at a safe distance, murmuring among themselves, their faces a mix of awe and concern. Mrs. Callahan approached again, her eyes soft as she looked at Cooper. "I saw him pulling Lily out," she said, her voice filled with wonder. "I thought it was crazy at first, but then I saw you all run out and I knew." He knew. Emily nodded, tears streaming down her cheeks as she hugged Lily closer. "He saved us," she said simply. "He saved our baby." As dawn broke, painting the sky with shades of pink and gold, the Thompsons were allowed back into their home. The air was clear now, the windows propped open to let in the fresh morning breeze. Emily carried Lily to the nursery, settling her back into the crib with a fresh blanket. The baby, exhausted, drifted off almost immediately, her tiny hands curled into fists. Emily lingered, watching her daughter's chest rise and fall. The reality of how close they'd come to losing her settling like a stone in her chest. Jack joined her, his arms slipping around her waist. "She's okay," he said softly, as much to reassure himself as her. "We're all okay." Downstairs, Cooper paced the living room, his nose twitching as he sniffed the air. Jack followed, him crouching to meet the dog's gaze. "You did good, boy," he said, his voice thick with emotion. Cooper's tail gave a slow wag, and he nudged Jack's hand with his nose, seeking the familiar comfort of his touch. Jack scratched behind his ears, a ritual they'd shared for years, but this time it felt different, weighted with gratitude, with awe. The day unfolded in a haze of adrenaline and exhaustion. The gas company sent a technician to inspect the heater, confirming a small crack in the gas line as the culprit. It was a rare failure, they said, but one that could have been catastrophic without early detection. Neighbors stopped by with casseroles and offers of support, their conversations inevitably turning to Cooper's heroics. By afternoon, the story had spread through Willow Creek, a small town where news traveled fast. The Willow Creek Gazette called, asking for an interview, but Emily and Jack declined, too drained to relive the night just yet. Instead, they focused on normalcy. Emily worked on a freelance design project in the kitchen, her laptop open, but her mind elsewhere. Jack tinkered in the garage, organizing tools as a distraction from the what-ifs that haunted him. Lily napped and played, blissfully unaware of the danger she'd escaped. And Cooper, ever vigilant, stayed close, his presence a quiet anchor for the family. That evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, they sat in the living room, Lily asleep in her playpen, Cooper sprawled across the rug. The open windows let in a cool breeze, and the faint hum of the new carbon monoxide detector, installed that morning, provided a subtle reassurance. "We need to do something for him," Emily said suddenly, breaking the silence. "For Cooper. Something to show him how much he means to us." Jack nodded, his eyes on the Labrador. "Maybe a big steak dinner," he said with a small smile. "Or one of those fancy dog beds he's always eyeing at the pet store." Emily laughed softly, the sound easing the tension in her chest. "He deserves more than that," she said. "He deserves everything." They fell silent, the weight of the night settling between them. Emily's mind replayed the moment she'd seen Cooper dragging Lily's blanket, the panic that had surged through her, the realization that he'd been acting out of love. Jack, too, was lost in thought, remembering the faint smell of gas, the way Cooper's barks had cut through the fog of sleep. They'd always known Cooper was special, but this was something beyond instinct, beyond training. It was loyalty, pure and unshakable. As the stars began to appear in the Ohio sky, Emily leaned down to stroke Cooper's fur, her fingers tracing the familiar lines of his face. "You're our guardian angel," she whispered, her voice breaking. Cooper's eyes met hers, steady and calm, and for a moment, it felt like he understood, not just the words, but the depth of their gratitude, the unbreakable bond they shared. The dawn light filtered through the open windows of the Thompson household, casting long shadows across the hardwood floors. The air in Willow Creek, Ohio, was crisp, carrying the scent of dew-soaked grass and the faint rustle of autumn leaves. Inside, the house felt different, still warm, still home, but marked by the memory of the night before. The gas leak that had threatened the lives of Emily, Jack, their 9-month-old daughter Lily, and their golden Labrador retriever Cooper had been contained, but its echoes lingered in the Thompsons' minds. The faint hum of the new carbon monoxide detector, installed hours after the firefighters left, was a constant reminder of how close they'd come to disaster and of the dog who had saved them. Emily sat at the kitchen table, a mug of coffee cooling in her hands as she stared at her laptop. She was supposed to be working on a logo for a local bakery, but her mind kept drifting to the image of Cooper dragging Lily's blanket across the nursery floor, his amber eyes wild with purpose. Lily was in her high chair, babbling as she pushed, Cheerios around her tray, oblivious to the danger she'd escaped. Cooper lay nearby, his golden fur catching the morning light, his new red collar, a gift from their veterinarian Dr. Patel, gleaming against his coat. He seemed calm now, but his ears twitched at every sound as if he were still on guard. Jack was in the garage, his engineer's hands sorting through a toolbox as a distraction from the what-ifs that haunted him. The faint chemical smell of the gas leak, the sight of Cooper pulling Lily toward the front door, the realization that they could have lost everything. It played on a loop in his mind. He paused, gripping a wrench, and looked toward the house where Cooper sprawled in the kitchen. "You're 1 in a million, boy," he muttered, a small smile breaking through the tension. The Labrador had always been special, but now he was something more. A hero, a guardian, a living testament to the bond between a family and their dog. The morning brought a steady stream of visitors. Mrs. Callahan, the neighbor who had called, arrived first, bearing a foil-covered dish of lasagna and a thermos of coffee. "You need to eat," she said firmly, setting the dish on the counter. "And you need to tell me how that dog of yours knew what was happening." Emily managed a tired smile, recounting the night in halting words. The crackle of the baby. Monitor Cooper's urgent whines, the moment they realized he was saving Lily from a silent threat. Mrs. Callahan's eyes widened, her hand resting on Cooper's head. "He's a miracle," she said, her voice thick with awe. A real miracle. Other neighbors followed, their offerings of casseroles, cookies, and kind words piling up in the kitchen. The story of Cooper's heroism had spread through Willow Creek like wildfire, carried by phone calls, text messages, and hurried conversations at the coffee shop. By noon, the Willow Creek Gazette had called again, and this time, Emily and Jack agreed to a short interview, wanting to honor Cooper's actions. The reporter, a young woman named Clara, sat in their living room, scribbling notes as they described the night. Cooper, sensing the attention, sat proudly beside Emily, his tail thumping against the rug. "It was like he knew before we did," Emily said, her voice soft but steady. "He didn't hesitate, didn't wait for us to figure it out. He just acted." Jack nodded, his arm around Lily, who was playing with a stuffed toy on the couch. "He's family," he said simply. "He's always been family, but now, he's our hero." Clara's eyes softened as she jotted down the quote, then reached to pet Cooper. "Mind if I take a picture?" she asked. Emily nodded, and Cooper posed obligingly, his ears perked as the camera clicked. The article appeared the next day, front-page news with a headline that read, "Local dog saves family from gas leak." The photo showed Cooper in mid-stride, his golden fur glowing in the sunlight from their lake trip the previous summer. The story detailed the gas leak, Cooper's actions, and the Thompsons' gratitude, ending with a call for community support for the local animal shelter. By evening, the article had been shared online, and the Thompsons' phone buzzed with messages from friends, neighbors, and even strangers moved by Cooper's story. The attention was overwhelming but heartwarming, and it sparked an idea. Over dinner that night, lasagna courtesy of Mrs. Callahan, Emily and Jack discussed how to channel the community's enthusiasm into something meaningful. "We should do something for Cooper," Emily said, cutting a small piece of meat for the Labrador, who waited patiently by the table. "Not just a treat or a new bed, but something bigger, something that helps other dogs, other families." Jack nodded, his engineer's mind already turning over possibilities. "Like a fund," he said, "to help people pay for vet bills. Call it the Cooper Fund." The idea took root, and over the next few days the Thompsons threw themselves into planning. Emily designed a simple logo, a silhouette of a Labrador with a heart-shaped tag, and set up a donation page online. Jack reached out to his colleague Mike, a volunteer at the Willow Creek Animal Shelter, who connected them with the shelter's director, Sarah. She was enthusiastic, offering to partner with them to identify families in need and promote the fund. Dr. Patel, their veterinarian, agreed to provide discounted services for recipients, and the Gazette promised to run a feature on the fund's launch. The Cooper Fund's first event was a pet parade at the community center, scheduled for mid-November. Emily and Jack spent their evenings preparing, printing flyers, coordinating with volunteers, and ensuring Cooper was ready for his moment in the spotlight. The Labrador seemed to sense the excitement, his energy boundless as he chased his tennis ball in the backyard or lay beside Lily's playpen, ever watchful. Lily, now more mobile, loved to toddle after him, giggling as he nudged her gently with his nose. The day of the parade was cold but clear. The community centre lawn transformed into a festive scene. Colourful banners fluttered between trees, tables were laden with baked goods and pet treats, and a small stage was set up for Dr. Patel to give a talk on pet safety. Families arrived with their dogs, poodles in sweaters, mutts with wagging tails, a bulldog in a tiny superhero cape. Cooper was the star, his red collar gleaming as he trotted beside Emily, greeting every dog and child with a friendly sniff. The Gazette photographer snapped pictures, capturing Cooper mid-leap as he caught a frisbee, earning cheers from the crowd. Mrs. Callahan manned a donation booth, regaling passers-by with Cooper's story. "He pulled that baby right out of the house," she told a group of wide-eyed kids. "Saved the whole family from a gas leak. That's a real hero." Dr. Patel's talk was a highlight, her calm voice explaining how to keep pets safe and trust their instincts. "Dogs like Cooper have an incredible ability to sense danger," she said, gesturing to the Labrador, who sat proudly beside Emily. "They're not just pets. They're family, protectors, friends." The crowd applauded, and Cooper let out a soft bark, earning a laugh. The trick contest was a hit, with dogs showing off everything from rolling over to jumping through hoops. Cooper, though not competing, delighted the crowd by catching a frisbee mid-air, his leap graceful and effortless. Lily, in her stroller, squealed with delight, and Emily felt a lump in her throat as she watched her family, human and canine, together in this moment of joy. The fundraiser raised $2,500, a strong start for the Cooper Fund, and several families expressed interest in adopting shelter pets, inspired by Cooper's story. Back home that evening, the Thompsons sat in the living room. Exhausted but elated, Lily was asleep in her crib, and Cooper sprawled across the rug, his head resting on a stuffed toy Lily had tossed his way. Emily and Jack reviewed the day's success, their voices soft with satisfaction. "We did good," Jack said, his hand resting on Emily's. "Cooper did good." Emily nodded, her eyes on the Labrador. "He's changing things," she said. "Not just for us, but for everyone." The weeks that followed saw the Cooper Fund grow. Donations trickled in, and the shelter reported that 2 dogs and a cat had been adopted thanks to the parade's exposure. Emily kept a shoebox of thank you notes from families who'd received help, a single mother whose beagle got surgery, a retiree whose cat needed dental care. Each note was a reminder of Cooper's impact, a legacy that extended beyond their home. Jack installed 2 more carbon monoxide detectors, his engineer's precision now focused on ensuring their safety, and Emily found herself checking them daily, a new habit born of the night that had changed everything. One quiet evening, as snow flurried outside, Emily and Jack sat by the fireplace, Lily asleep upstairs and Cooper at their feet. They talked about the future, more fundraisers, a possible pause at the lake event in the spring, maybe even a scholarship for veterinary students in Cooper's name. The Labrador, now 6, was starting to show subtle signs of aging, few grey hairs around his muzzle, a slight stiffness after long play sessions. Emily noticed with a pang, her hand lingering on his head. "You're not allowed to get old, Coop," she murmured, half joking, half serious. Jack nodded, his eyes glistening as he looked at Cooper. "We've got time," he said, his voice steady but thick with emotion, "and we'll make every moment count." The stars shone brightly outside, and Cooper's gentle snores filled the room, a reminder that their hero was still with them, still watching over them, still changing the world one wag at a time. 3 years had passed since the night Cooper, the Thompson family's golden Labrador retriever, had dragged 9-month-old Lily from her crib, saving the family from a silent gas leak in their Willow Creek, Ohio home. The seasons had turned, blanketing the town in snow, then blossoms, then the golden hues of autumn. But the memory of that night remained a cornerstone of the Thompsons' lives. It was not just a story of survival, but a catalyst for change, a spark that had ignited a movement in their small community. The Cooper Fund, born from gratitude for their dog's heroism, had grown into a lifeline for countless pets and their owners, and Cooper himself had become a symbol of loyalty and love. It was a crisp April morning in 2028, and the Thompson household buzzed with the energy of a new day. Emily, now 35, stood at the kitchen counter, pouring coffee as she glanced at her laptop, where the Cooper Fund's donation page displayed a running total of $25,000 raised over the past 3 years. The fund had helped over 100 families in Willow Creek and beyond, covering everything from routine vet visits to emergency surgeries. Lily, now a lively 4-year-old, sat at the table, colouring a picture of a dog that bore a striking resemblance to Cooper. Her auburn curls bounced as she hummed, her crayons scattering across the page. Cooper, now 9, lay sprawled on the kitchen floor, his golden fur flecked with grey around his muzzle and eyes. His red collar, a gift from Dr. Patel after the gas leak, was worn but still bright, a badge of his heroism. He was slower these days, his joints stiff after long walks, but his amber eyes remained sharp, following Lily's every move. Emily watched him with a pang, her heart aching at the signs of his aging. "You're still our hero, Coop," she murmured, reaching down to scratch his ears. Cooper's tail thumped against the floor, a slow, contented wag that spoke of years of love. Jack, 37, was in the garage, tinkering with a model airplane he was building with Lily for a school science fair. His engineer's mind found solace in the precision of the task, but his thoughts often drifted to Cooper. The gas leak had left a mark on him, a quiet vigilance that surfaced in his nightly checks of the carbon monoxide detectors, now a permanent fixture in their home. He'd upgraded their heating system, installed additional safety measures, and read every article he could find on canine instincts, marveling at how Cooper had sensed the danger before any human could. "You're one of a kind, boy," he'd say, tossing Cooper a treat during their evening walks. The Cooper Fund had become a cornerstone of Willow Creek's community, its success a testament to the town's tight-knit spirit. The initial pet parade had grown into an annual event, drawing families from neighbouring towns to celebrate their pets and support the fund. The Pause at the Lake Day, first held the spring after the gas leak, had become a tradition, with shelter dogs romping in the water alongside Cooper, who still loved chasing his tennis ball into the shallows. The Willow Creek Gazette ran regular updates on the fund's impact, and Emily had become adept at managing its online presence, sharing stories of pets helped and families reunited. One such story had arrived that morning, a thank you note from a family whose golden retriever, Bella, had received chemotherapy funded by the Cooper Fund. "Bella's back to her old self, chasing squirrels and cuddling with our kids," the note read. "Thank you, Cooper, for giving her a second chance." Emily added it to the shoebox under the coffee table, now overflowing with letters, cards, and photos of grateful families and their pets. Each one was a reminder of Cooper's legacy, a ripple effect that had started with a single act of instinct and love. The community's response had only grown over the years. The local elementary school had named its library corner the Cooper Reading Nook, where kids read to therapy dogs, inspired by Cooper's story. Dr. Patel had started a free pet safety workshop, funded in part by the Cooper Fund, teaching families how to recognize their pets' instincts and keep them safe. Mrs. Callahan, ever the town's unofficial historian, had taken to telling Cooper's story at every community event, her dramatic flair turning it into a local legend. "He pulled that baby right out of the house," she'd say, her eyes shining. "Saved the whole family from a gas leak. That's a dog with a heart of gold." This spring, The Thompsons were planning their biggest event yet, a Cooper's Heroes Festival to mark the 3rd anniversary of the gas leak. The community centre lawn would host a pet talent show, a silent auction, and a hero dog award ceremony, with Cooper as the first recipient. Emily had designed a new logo for the event, featuring Cooper's silhouette against a heart-shaped sunrise, and Jack had coordinated with local businesses for donations. The shelter had lined up 10 adoptable dogs to showcase, hoping to find them homes, and the Gazette was set to live-stream the event, spreading Cooper's story even further. The morning of the festival was bright and warm, the air filled with the scent of blooming lilacs. The community centre was a hive of activity, volunteers setting up booths, kids running with balloons, and dogs of every size and breed wagging their tails. Cooper, his greying fur still gleaming, trotted beside Emily, his energy tempered but his spirit undimmed. Lily, now old enough to understand her dog's heroism, held his leash proudly, her small hand gripping it tightly. "Cooper's the best," she declared to anyone who would listen, her voice carrying over the chatter. The talent show was a highlight, with dogs performing tricks from balancing treats on their noses to weaving through obstacle courses. Cooper, too old for high jumps, charmed the crowd by gently taking a toy from Lily's hand and placing it at Emily's feet, earning a round of applause. The Hero Dog Award ceremony brought tears to many eyes. Sarah, the shelter director, presented Cooper with a medal, a small silver bone engraved with his name, while Jack read a short speech about his actions 3 years ago. "He didn't just save us," Jack said, his voice steady but emotional. "He showed us what love looks like, what family means." The festival raised $5,000 for the Cooper Fund, and 4 shelter dogs found homes by the end of the day. As the sun set, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, Emily and Jack sat on a blanket with Lily, watching Cooper nap contentedly nearby. The community's gratitude was palpable, a warmth that enveloped them like the evening breeze. "He's given us so much," Emily said, her hand resting on Jack's. "More than we could ever repay." Jack nodded, his eyes on Cooper. "He's our miracle," he said simply. Lily, curled up between them, reached out to pat Cooper's head. "Love you, Coop," she whispered, her voice sleepy but sincere. Cooper's tail gave a slow wag, his eyes half closed in contentment. As the years passed, Cooper's aging became more pronounced. By his 11th birthday, his walks were shorter, his naps longer, and his grey fur had spread across his face and back. Dr. Patel monitored him closely, prescribing supplements for his joints and a special diet to keep him comfortable. Emily and Jack cherished every moment, taking him to the lake each spring, where he still waded into the water, his enthusiasm undimmed by his age. Lily, now 6, drew pictures of him for school, her stories always beginning with, "My dog Cooper saved my life." The Cooper Fund continued to thrive, becoming a model for other communities. It had helped over 200 families by now, and its annual events were fixtures on Willow Creek's calendar. Emily and Jack had expanded their efforts, starting a scholarship for veterinary students in Cooper's name and partnering with a regional animal welfare organization to extend the fund's reach. The Gazette ran a retrospective on the fund's 5th anniversary, calling Cooper Willow Creek's guardian angel. One quiet evening in the winter of 2030, as snow fell gently outside, Emily and Jack sat by the fireplace, Lily reading a book nearby. Cooper, now 12, lay on his favorite bed by the hearth, his breathing slow and steady. His eyes were cloudy, but they still lit up when Lily called his name. Emily looked at him, her heart full of gratitude and a quiet ache. "He's given us everything," she said, her voice soft. Jack nodded, his hand finding hers. "And we'll keep his legacy alive," he said. "For him, for all of them." Cooper passed away that spring surrounded by his family, his head resting in Lily's lap, The Thompsons grieved deeply, but they found solace in the Cooper Fund, which continued to grow, helping pets and families across Ohio. Each year, they returned to Lakeview Park, scattering a few of Cooper's favorite treats in the water. Oh, ritual to honor their hero. Lily, growing into a kind and compassionate girl, vowed to become a veterinarian, inspired by the dog who had saved her life. As the stars rose over Willow Creek, the Thompsons knew Cooper's spirit lived on. In the fund, in the community, in their hearts. He was more than a dog, more than a hero. He was family forever.